we had a table, data, as a dairy farmer, and came up with no texting. At least, what are you doing?
I was looking at
Oh, that's even better. Not even discreet about it. We did the table, found profit maximization via the accounting approach, total revenues minus total cost. Then we used marginal analysis, where I told you if you didn't remember anything else, remember marginal revenue equals marginal cost, because that's going to apply to all full market structures. And then we kind of did this with the little rectangular area. Somebody in my other class asked the other day, well, are we going to have to calculate the area of this rectangle that's shaded? Yes. Again, I may not even give you the numbers. I might just have, well, I have to give you numbers. Sorry, I wouldn't do that. But I might not give you the shade. So you may have a horizontal line, which is your demand curve, which is marginal revenue, and your marginal cost curve, and then your average total cost curve. And that might be all I give you. I mean, that's it. And you tell me what the area, and then there'll be some numbers. Obviously, I'll give you numbers on the axes. But then you'll tell me what the area of that, what the profits are. Okay, so in order to do that, you take marginal cost, where it equals marginal revenue, which is where I put the dot. I wouldn't give you the dot either. And there's where the number would be, say it's a 10. Then remember, right there is where you're going to stop where it touches that average total cost curve. And this amount right there would be your rectangular profit. And then, of course, over on this axis, I would give you numbers too. If this was 8 and this was 6. So then the area of that rectangle would be 20. 2 times 10. Okay. So, again, you won't see the shade. You just have to kind of figure out what amounts, where that shaded area would be. Next slide was what happens if the firm isn't making a profit, like the picture on the right. Well, there's other illustrations that could occur, and they're listed there. Let me, that one on the right there, I'm kind of glad I drew it there, but if this is your price, and this is the 6 is your average total cost. Okay, because that's where it's touching that average total cost curve as you go straight down. If price is greater than the average total cost, it is in that case, that's the first bullet here. Price greater than average total cost, which means the firm makes a profit. There's my profit in that shaded area. If price is equal to average total cost, which means the firm breaks even, its total cost equals total revenue. So that would be the illustration like this one, this illustration here. Market price, let's say it's 8. The average total cost curve is moving through here, and it's just everything is tangent, barely touching that marginal revenue line. The profit maximizing quantity, though, is still where MR and MC intersect. All that's happened is that average total cost line is just kind of a little bit shifted further up. If you were to shift that up a little bit. So when all the curves, the average total cost line minimum point is touching the bottom of the, well, it's barely touching the marginal revenue line or demand curve, then you see break even. The firm is just breaking even. Okay. What if the price is below the average total cost? That's this illustration. So now, what if this average total cost line, this gold shaded line, is up above the horizontal marginal revenue and price line. That means average total costs are greater than price. Price is less than average total cost means the firm experiences losses. So the revenue, I mean the rectangle is now below the average total cost line. It's still the same way, so let me just kind of draw it here. If your price is, say, at $8, and your average total cost is something like this, your marginal cost is this. So here's where the two intersect. Marginal revenue, marginal cost. That's what you got to know. And then you go straight up to where it touches the average total cost curve and over. This amount would be the loss, since the average total cost is greater than the price. And that rectangle would be calculated the same way. Length times width, whatever this would be if that was 10. And this would say 10 up here. Your loss would be 20 in this case. So these cost curves, U-shaped curves, along with the revenue curve, marginal revenue curve, come together in what we call marginal analysis using, the board is bad again. When I'm writing, it feels like I'm writing on sandpaper. I sent an email yesterday to someone, remember the other day, Monday, it was geometric figures on it and algebra stuff on it, couldn't get off. I sent another email and said, this board has to be replaced. Something. So, and I got a response. I think I rattled somebody's cage, which is, I mean, you shouldn't have to do that, but I used to be a department chair, so I kind of have a few contacts and I can maybe go around and do a few things. We got a lot of new people in facilities. I don't know the director, the new guy, but you know, hey, come on, let's just get the thing ordered and do it. I know we're a government institution. You know how government is. I mean, slow to order things, get slow to get something. You've got to get a PO for everything. So the PO was done. The purchase order was done back in February. I said, okay, February 5th. Why can't we get it here? Let's go. It's March 12th. It's probably sitting in the warehouse, the board. They just haven't brought it over. I hope it's a bigger board than that one. That's a smaller board. I hope it's you know, it's got, you know, I hope it's this size. I don't think it's going to be. Anyhow, all right. So this competitive firm is got to make a decision sometimes whether to continue operating or shutting down. When do you shut down? Well, still we're going to leave this up. I'm going to leave these two drawings up here. But there's a decision. In this case, you're probably thinking, okay, well, they're losing money. Why would they continue operating? Well, they can continue to operate in this case. One thing we don't have up here is another curve called the average variable cost curve. If the selling price is below the minimum average variable cost, the firm should shut down. Costs are greater than the market price. So if I add in this average variable cost, let me click the button here first. The second bullet point, probably we'll do that first. If the selling price is above the minimum average variable cost but below the average total cost, the firm should produce in the short run a quantity that corresponds with MR equals MC. It will incur some losses, but they can be minimized. So that's this case. When the selling price, that's P, is above the average minimum variable cost, and that is, but below the average total cost, it's kind of in between the two, the firm would produce in the short run. They can continue to operate, stay open. They're going to lose money, as it's illustrated here with this rectangle. but we try to minimize those. Sometimes restaurants do this when during the summer months, they're slow. Sales are slow, service, business is slower. Right now, things are, if you work in a restaurant, you're probably swamped, right? People, it's really busy. The northern crowd is here. We talked about this the other day, how some guy works at Cracker Barrel, and he said that it's really busy, it's packed, but sales are, I forget what he said, sales are up, but tips are about the same. Interesting reflection of how people tip servers. He wasn't real happy with it. So if you work in a restaurant, you probably can agree with me there. The northern crowd doesn't tip well, right? Anyhow, the restaurants oftentimes slow down during summer. So they've got fixed costs already they're going to pay. They got to pay their rent. They got to continue to do that, but they can cut back their staff a little bit. They can cut back their variable cost and raw materials. May not need as much food material to be able to get through the summer season. They don't need to hire as many, or they can kind of cut back the staff to fewer hours. As long as they can cover their minimum average variable cost, they can continue to operate. Now they might lose money through the summer for a short period of time, short run, but then when the winter comes and the season comes and they make money again, and they're making profits. So, you know, restaurants kind of are a good example. This one is, if the selling price is below the minimum average variable cost, the firm should shut down. Now this is the example here where what if the price was there. Maybe the price was at $6. I don't know if they would lower their price, but I'm just saying, what if the average variable costs were higher than the $8 price? I just drew it like this so that it would be below it. Now they can't even cover their labor or their raw materials. They can't cover their minimum average variable cost. They can't cover any cost, essentially. Their average total cost, their variable cost, the price that they're selling their product for is not going to make it. They have to shut down here in this case. So it has to be below it, though. It has to be fully below it. It can't be touching it. If it's touching it, it's barely touching the bottom of it, they can again continue to operate. Gonna lose money here, but they're on like life support here. Business would have to really be careful because they're probably gonna end up shutting down eventually. But it's got to be right below it. Okay. I think there is a slide that kind of indicates that. The objective is obviously to maximize profits. This is kind of a repeat of some things I've talked about. One of the resources is capital and physical capital, as well as financial capital. Financial capital is acquired through loans, debt. You want to borrow money, maybe want to borrow $1 million to build a new physical capital item, plant. Equity sales, maybe you want to sell stock to the public to generate that $1 million. You lose ownership rights then. I mean, you dilute the rights to the business a little bit. The cost of debt is the interest paid on the debt. So once you have a loan, you will pay interest on that loan, or a bond if you sell a bond. Now those are kind of like accounting or finance concepts. We're not going to get too deep into that. Accounting profit, if you recall, this is a repeat of what I had back in the previous chapter, first chapter on cost, is the total revenue less total cost, except for the opportunity cost of capital. The profit figure reported in annual reports, income statements, is accounting profit. So anytime you're dealing with accounting profit, you don't consider opportunity cost. And when you see their annual reports, the accountant's done it. The economist hasn't done it. The economist, though, is the total revenue less total cost, including those opportunity costs. So that's just kind of a recall of what we had back in previous chapter. There are different kinds of profit. We call them economic profit. It's different than accounting profit. And there's degrees of it. Economists refer to a firm that subtracts value and their cost of equity capital, financial capital, is greater than its accounting profit as having a negative economic profit. A graph will show this better. I think there is a graph on the next slide. A firm that neither adds value nor subtracts it from the marketplace, and whose revenue is sufficient to pay the cost of inputs, but generates nothing in excess of this, this will result as a zero economic profit, or what oftentimes is called normal profit. Remember the graph we had a couple slides ago that was just tangent to the bottom of it? That is an example of zero economic profit. If they're earning more than the owner's opportunity cost, they're earning a positive economic profit. So here are the, let's see, let me go back, see if there's any, can I have pictures on? No, I didn't. Let me go back to that one big graph, this one. Graphically, this break-even point, this one's an example of zero economic profit. Okay, zero economic profit. I thought I had one somewhere. I might, but this is an example of negative economic profit. Obviously, they're losing money here. And the one over on the far right is an example of positive economic profit. Now, we also call zero economic profit normal profit. So let me go back to where we were. There we go, zero economic profit or normal profit. Now, the long run is that period of time in which those resources cannot be, at least one of the resources cannot be changed in the production process. If a new firm were to be created and add its output to the industry, so let's think of a coffee place. Maybe somebody wants to come in and compete by selling coffee against Starbucks and McDonald's, everybody else that sells coffee. I did see that they're opening another Starbucks on the university somewhere. I don't know exactly which corner or where it's going to be, but they say it's going to be less than a mile from the one near the Panera Bread, I think. Probably meet Pueblos. Where's University Walk? University Walk is where it's going to be. I think that's where Kohl's is. But then there's another Starbucks not too far away.
Right down the road.
Yeah, it's not too far away.
But there is.
But there's going to be another one on University. I read that in the paper this morning. The one in Target will probably close, I would think. There's one in that Target there.
Because there's one in University.
And there's going to be one in the big mall, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So there are going to be a lot of Starbucks. But let's say that somebody else wanted to come in and just compete against them as a new firm. If a new firm were to be created and add its output being the coffee that they make, it would involve more of all resources being added to the market. So they would add labor, people, they'd hire people there for the business. They would hire, or they would buy machines, the espresso machine, everything that they use, blenders and whatever to make the frappuccinos and the coffee that they have. They're adding more of those resources. They get a facility, they get a building. Likewise, if a firm left the industry, it would take away those resources. So if one coffee place went out of business, it takes away all those things. Labor, people will lose jobs, the machines are sold off to the highest bidder, whatever it is. This is called exit and entry in the long run. So this happens in the long run. As companies lose money, they shut down, they go below the average variable cost, they exit the industry because they can't make it. Then firms will enter the industry. Oftentimes I see restaurants opening all the time in closing. If you've lived there long enough, you've seen it. Come and go. I'm trying to think of a place in a corner, like a facility, you know, a building that's been used by, I don't know, 2 or 3 different people, and they think they're going to make it, and they have an idea. And, out at Lakewood Ranch, they opened a, I can't remember the name of the, it's one with the Publix shopping center and Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, that one. The first place was on a corner. The first place that opened was an Italian place, pizza place. I don't remember the name of it. It didn't last 6 months. And the next place was a seafood place, like a really high-class blue dolphin type. I mean, I think it was the name of it, Dolphin something. It didn't last about 6 months. Now it's Truman's Bar and Grill. I don't know how they're doing. I think they're still open. But it amounts to this. If their average variable costs and fixed costs are too high, they can't cover them, they exit. They go down, they shut down. Yeah.
I said it's Lakewood Ranch. I mean, they probably got like high. I'm confused. Is that supposed to be long run or short run on top?
Well, the short run does say is a time frame in which at least one of the resources used in production cannot be changed. So that is correct.
Okay.
That's what the short run is. I can't change my rent in the short run.
Okay.
But in the long run, everything can be changed. So once all resources become variable, and it could be a year, it could be 2 years, whatever it is, the firm likely will exit entry the marketplace. Some firms will exit the marketplace even if their rent is still due. Of course, then they're sued by the management company. Like if you open up a restaurant, you probably got to sign on maybe a 5-year lease, 4-year lease, 2-year, I don't know, probably longer than a year. What if you go out of business in 6 months? Well, you still owe that remaining portion, so they can probably sue you for the difference in court. So I guess you have to take that risk. In the long run, all quantities and resources can be changed. Okay, everything can be variable. Here is a picture. Actually, no, it's the next one. Entry and exit occurs whenever firms are earning more or less than normal profit. So that's more profit. I mean, that's more than normal, but that's above normal profits. This is the loss, the one I had earlier. That is less than normal profit, and we're losing money. If firms are earning more than normal profit, other firms will have an incentive to enter the market. So because Starbucks is doing well, people think they are, I think they are, financially, you have an idea and you say, you know what, I think I'm going to put up a coffee place. I think I can make money too. Doesn't seem too hard. I'll make it my own little flair to it, design whatever, and I'll get in because they have an incentive. You see other companies making money. What's a good idea right now? That e-cigarette thing. At least I think that's somewhat popular. But what's going to happen with that market?
It's gonna get flooded.
It's going to get flooded. It's going to get saturated. I mean, those that got in early, obviously, if they have low costs, they'll probably be okay. Those that kind of got in and they had to pay high costs for maybe the rent or other costs that they're having to pay, then they may not make it. So, but they had an incentive. Somebody had an incentive to start and get into it because you see that things were doing well. I can't think of something. What else? I think the yogurt market's getting saturated a little bit. Thinking of ideas to open businesses. And so they look around and if you have an incentive, if you're making profits, oftentimes people will kind of jump in and do the same thing. If you're earning less than normal profit, then you have an incentive to exit the market. You don't want to stay in the business. You'll have to leave because you're below the average variable cost. Here's a graph illustration of this. 2 different big kind of moves here. On the left side is a single firm, on the right side is the industry. So remember, this is a competitive industry. And I don't know what we're selling here, maybe bushels of wheat, 90,000 bushels of wheat's the market quantity, equilibrium. The price is at 50 bucks a bushel. This is what price you have to take and sell your product for. So you take the price that the market industry says that you're going to sell your good for, $50. Actually, I didn't use bushels of wheat. I think last time I used like a video game. Each video game costs 50 bucks. And at $50, we sell 90,000 of them. All right. So I'm a single firm and I want to get into the market of selling video games. This is my price, that horizontal line. That is my marginal revenue curve, which is my demand curve. So this is the price. And at that point, I'm making exactly zero economic profit or normal profit. Okay. Well, what if something happens? Well, you'll see the curve shift here in a second. An increase in demand shift. I got it here. There we go. An increase in demand temporarily raises the price. So in the market on the right for video games, what if the video game is very popular and customers start to buy it? Well, that means the demand is going up. So the demand curve shifts to the right, doesn't it? It shifts to the right. I don't necessarily, well, the arrow there looks okay, but the demand curve shifts out to the right. What does that do to the price now? It goes up to 60 bucks. Supply stayed the same. But the demand curve shifted to the right because of the interest. People liked the video game. So now that single firm can raise its price. And when you raise the price, it raises it up. What happens to their profits? Higher prices draw in new competitors. Because now these new competitors, it doesn't show one thing here, I wish it did. Because we're at this intersection, we're earning profits now. We're earning kind of like that graph over there. Because we're earning a profit, our price is above average total cost. We're earning above normal profits. And so that causes new people to come into the industry. Now I'm going to say, and now I'm going to have competitors. People see that and they go, okay, man, that video game market must be pretty good. I'm going to make a video game to compete with this other company. They're getting above normal profits. They're selling it at 60 bucks. But when new competitors enter the market, what happens to the supply curve? Supply curve shifts back to the right because now there are new sellers in the marketplace. So the supply curve originally was here for video game production. Now, because there's more video game businesses, it shifts back to the right, which, what happens to the price?
Goes down.
It goes back down to 50 bucks. And it's like we said, it was saturation. It's flooded. The market gets flooded. We're getting higher prices for the item. The market gets flooded, now you're going to lower the price. I have no idea what e-cigarettes cost. Anybody? No? I have no idea what the price is on that. Maybe I don't want to go to those places. I don't smoke cigarettes. But just for information purposes, maybe I will. So what's happening is that the first person in the market for that probably could get higher prices. But then as more competitors entered, now the prices are going to start to fall because there's more supply. And you know, you can say, okay, well, he's selling his e-cigarettes for 10 bucks. I can go down the street for 8. Because the market is saturated or being flooded. So higher prices draw in new competitors. Increased supply returns the price to equilibrium. It returns it back down to $50, and now the firms are making just normal profits. It's a time element. I mean, obviously this doesn't happen overnight. This will happen over a period of time, maybe in the long run, over months of time, maybe a year it'll happen or two, before a market becomes saturated and flooded and the prices return back to normal. Here's a summary sheet of the things we've been talking about. The couple, it's pretty much what I said. The top portion is about profitability. The bottom is about production condition. So if the price, I think one of these is similar to what I had up earlier. If the price is above average, minimum average total cost, the firm is profitable. That's that, okay? If it's equal to, it breaks even. If it's less than, it's unprofitable, it loses money. So that was on that one slide. If it's above the minimum average variable cost, the blue line, then it would produce in the short run. In other words, it'd stay in business over the summer if you're a restaurant. You're just kind of making ends meet. If it's equal to it, the firm is indifferent between producing in the short run or not, just covers its variable cost. That's that one right here, where you're right at the bottom of it. It's equal to it. So you're indifferent. You may shut down, you may not, but you're like on life support. And then if it's less than, you definitely shut down. That's the line here, the bottom one. And you'll shut down in the short run because you can't even cover your variable costs. You can't cover your labor, raw materials. So it's kind of a summary of what the price and average cost conditions were. And I believe that's the last slide for the chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the monopoly slides, which I put up this morning early. Maybe you got a chance to print them. Find them here. Like I said, there's two series of slides for the monopoly material. This one is about the basics of it and price discrimination. And then the next set of slides is on antitrust policy. The chapter is, what chapter is that? 9? Chapter 9 in your textbook. So monopolies are the other end of the extreme of the market structures that we have. What is a monopoly? Monopoly is a market structure in which there is a single supplier of a product. That's kind of the basic definition of a monopoly. A single supplier, one firm in the industry. The monopolist has maybe small or large. Most students assume it to be large, but it doesn't have to be. But because you think of companies or an institution like the post office as being large, that's, you kind of, the implication is that you always think of monopolists as large. But it could be small. It could be a convenience store with 5 employees. Could have monopoly power. An example could be because of the geographic location. You might be in the middle of the state and you're the only convenience store within a 100-mile radius. And what could you have monopoly power. You could charge any price you want. As people drive by, price of gas will be a little higher, price of everything in the convenience stores will be higher. It's already high anyways, but you could charge even higher prices because you realize that you're the only one in town, or the only one within a geographic region. So geography sometimes can cause monopoly power. You must be the only supplier, as I said, single supplier of the product. And you sell a product for which there is no close substitutes. The greater the number of close substitutes for the product, the less likely it is you're going to be able to exercise any kind of power. If there's something somebody can choose that's close to it, forget it. You're going to probably not be able to charge any price you want. They're fairly common, although there are laws against them, the antitrust laws. U.S. Postal Service, because of the first-class delivery of mail, there is no other competitor with that, with postage. There is for packages, though. Okay. Local utility companies. You're Florida Power and Light. Can you choose who you want to get? There is no other company. Although there is Peace River Cooperative, there's Tampa Electric, I believe, Progress Energy in Pinellas County, various other utility companies, but they service counties or areas of the state. You don't have a choice to use Progress Energy. You have to take Florida Power and Light. I think Florida Power and Light is the largest utility company in the state, and I think the others, I'm not sure, my brother-in-law works for Florida Power and Light, I could check with him. That all other companies actually buy their power from Florida Power and Light. And then they're like a middleman. They get it from Florida Power and Light and you charge, I don't know if that's true, but I'll have to check on that. I know Peace River does. All right, local utility company and local cable providers. Again, Bright House, Comcast, examples of a monopolistic type of environment where they monopolize the market areas, subdivisions. That's what they have. Lakewood Ranch, where we lived a few years ago, was all Bright House. And then Verizon Fios came in, laid the lines. Now I have a little bit of a choice with what type of service you want to get. Microsoft is a classic example of a private institution that has been frowned upon in terms of its monopoly power, and they went to court. I think it was back around 2001, and they were found guilty of actually violating they weren't guilty of violating the Sherman Antitrust Act. They were deemed a monopoly by the Justice Department. They had some remedies for them. In other words, what were they going to do, the government? One of them was that they were thinking of splitting them up. There's another company that got split up many, many years ago because they did violate monopolistic laws. That was AT&T. I don't think many of you were, 1982? 1982 was when AT&T was found to be guilty of monopolizing the long-distance phone service. You guys don't remember any of that, but we're around for that. But years ago, there was no cell service for the most part. We had the local phone service, and then you had long-distance provider. And the long-distance provider was AT&T, and they had a monopoly. They had it all. And the government broke them up into various bells. You have all these different Southwest Bell, Pacific Bell, all the various bell companies that kind of emerged as they broke them up into different little companies. What's funny about that is they broke them up back in 1982, but then they started merging back together. They started buying each other back up. So AT&T is a classic example. Many, many years ago, you had to buy your long-distance service. You couldn't call somebody out of town, long distance, out of state, without having AT&T. You had no choice. That's who you had to have. That's who you got. Microsoft, did you have a choice on your operating system? Windows? No. You pretty much got it. What about your Internet Explorer? Well, that's what it's called. But what about your browser? You had to use Internet Explorer. So you could go and Google this and Google Microsoft, and you'll come up with some things about the case against them. Why do monopolies arise? Fundamental cause is a barrier to entry. They prevent entry by other companies and firms. And this is one of the things that Microsoft was under scrutiny for. Was it Microsoft preventing other companies from getting in? Because they kind of controlled the Windows operating systems market. And when you buy a computer, it's already preloaded, installed, and you have no choice. You can look at it two ways. Microsoft started small. I don't know the history behind it. I know Apple started in a garage, I think, right? But I don't know the history behind Microsoft as much. And the you can look at it from a point of view that, hey, that's nothing but good business. Bill Gates did what he had to do. They created this operating system called Windows. And why punish them for doing well, being profitable? I get that. On the other hand, if they were doing well and they prevented other companies from competing, you're starting to monopolize the market. You're not allowing customers a choice. There isn't really a good choice for them against Windows anyways. Is there? Unix? Is that one? Anybody? I'm not a computer geek, but I mean, I obviously Mac. If you want to get a Mac, it's a whole different ball of wax. Macs can run Windows software today because they have the same chip, the Intel chip. Years ago they couldn't. They had a different kind of chip processor, and you had to have Mac software and Windows software and have separate. A little more blurred today because of the processing chip. But the fundamental cause is a barrier to entry. There are some reasons here. Monopoly resources. This is the natural resources. Sometimes a single owner of an important resource that cannot be readily duplicated, which is a natural resource, such as De Beers and their diamonds. De Beers owned about 80–90% of the world's diamonds. And so they control the market for diamonds. I think there's a clip in this slide series about that, how a diamond, is really nothing but a piece of rock. And is it? So because they own the resource, it was very difficult for somebody to come in and compete with them. Government created monopolies. This is the patent and copyright laws that protect companies. And that, in essence, gives you power. New pharmaceutical drugs. Copyright patent laws, I think, are 20 years now. New patent. So you're kind of protected for 20 years. And so you monopolize. You have the market. Nobody else can come in with a competitive brand. Once that patent expires, though, you'll see 50,000 generics that compete with you. But you're kind of protected for a while. And the government has created that. They also restrict entry. Governments will restrict entry like TV, cable TV, local cable TV. Local governments will say, this is what we will allow in the package. And that's going to be a restriction to entry. There are two other causes. Natural monopolies. Natural monopolies are like the big utility companies, electric company, like FPL. It's a single firm can supply a good or service to an entire market at a smaller cost than two or more firms. This achieves economies of scale. We haven't talked much about economies of scale. Or have we? Yes, we have. We have talked about it. It was in that previous chapter on cost. But if you can, one big company would be better off providing electric to a community than you have 2 or 3 or 4 of these big, massive facilities, because that's costly. It's like the big plant in Michigan. Why have such big plants and fixed costs when you can have just one kind of cover everything and lower your per unit cost? So it's just better to have a single firm supply a good or service at times. And so with electric companies like this, it's better, but the government has to regulate. The government has to come in and say, okay, you can provide service through the whole state of Florida, but we're going to limit you the hourly, kilowatt hours charge that you can charge each customer. And FPO will always come out and ask for increase of kilowatt hours. They don't always get approved for it. They have to get, say, they make enough money as it is, so that the government will go, well, no, we're not increasing. It's like the postage. Every once in a while, they want the postage stamps to go up from 45
Every
cents
time.
to 48 cents or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But they can't just do it on their own. The government has to approve the increase, the rate increase.
So why didn't do that with the gasoline?
Like what would do?
Why didn't do that with the gasoline? Why didn't regulate the price of the gasoline like that?
Oh, gasoline?
Mhm.
Gasoline is a commodity oil, and so it's traded, well, sold in the marketplace. I think if you saw that control, government involvement of the general marketplace and the rate increases, then you would probably see shortages in the market, where there wouldn't be gas in some areas and some areas would have it. It's an argument whether people, but if you've charged $1, if the government limited it to $1 a gallon, there would be shortages. Because the demand is much higher than the supply. Years ago, there's always arguments about why the government doesn't regulate pricing of gas. I actually don't think they should. I think they should continue to keep it, let the market decide. Price of gas is high now, usually is in the spring. It'll subside by May, June. It fluctuates. I think car manufacturers, because of government regulations, are going to have to be required to make cars that, I think by the year 2016 or 2020, every car will have to have like 25 miles per gallon economy. Well, that's going to cause the demand for gas to fall. People won't need as much gas in the marketplace. And so there's already some of that happening. You'll still have the big trucks and stuff, but I think even trucks and SUVs will have to be a little more economical. The fourth one there is actions by firms to keep other firms out. The example was Microsoft. So was Microsoft guilty of keeping other firms out? That's on your point of view. So why punish them if they're doing good? They're making profits. And again, why? So there's two different ways to think of it. I'm all for competitive environment and making money, but if you're going to keep people from competing against you, that's not good either. All right. I think this was the little illustration of De Beers. Diamonds are profits forever, the mining company. The majority of mines in South America were owned by British business, Cecil Rhodes. So most of the world population of diamonds was controlled there. So they did have a monopoly. All right, I'm going to stop. Let's see. Where's the next slide? Yeah, let's stop there. I'm going to show a video clip next time about diamonds. So we'll